Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. And I bring happy news all week here for the Kansas City week. We're all waiting for. The Ravens are undefeated at 2-0 after defeating the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. Joining us here on the Lee Tessier Team Hotline, Luke Jones joins us after after all the heat sitting you did and all the driving out to Owings Mills and all the early days and late nights. It is rewarding for this team to be 2-0 right now, right? Like there is some energy about this team. There's some energy about how the national media is treating them. And certainly it goes back to, that fateful night when I dozed off and they drafted Lamar Jackson and how that turns out 18 months later.
Exactly, and that's really what the most important takeaway is from these first 2 weeks. I mean, we said all along, even back when the schedule came out in April, if the Ravens were going to fancy themselves as a legitimate contender this year, they needed to be 2-0. You just look at it. Miami confirmed what we already knew by laying another egg against New England on Sunday. They're terrible. I mean, they might be the worst team in the history of the NFL before it's all said and done. So you need to win that game.
Well, we've never had an NFL team sell off, right? We've had teams not so good. We've had teams get injured. We've never had, their three best players want to leave and everybody else is already gone. I mean, in week 2, if they trade these guys off, it's going to be very hard for them to win a football game. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult, and maybe we've had teams that have tanked, but not this blatantly tanking. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. But that aside, then coming home, knowing you're playing the team that had the number 1 overall pick, Arizona was dreadful last year. They gave up on their franchise quarterback after 1 year, new regime. They bring in Kyler Murray, and it's the kind of game where you're not necessarily going to have a major takeaway from your universally as a football team in getting a win. But I think the takeaway from week 2, much as it was in week 1, the maturation, the sensational play, and as I wrote at WNST.net, Lamar Jackson being the closer on Sunday, a game that I think was a lot closer than many of us anticipated. And I think you give Kyler Murray a lot of credit there, and I think the Cardinals may end up winning a few more games than people expected when it's all said and done here in 2019. But when the Ravens needed a play to seal the game, it wasn't an RPO. It wasn't a run on 3rd and long like we saw last year, and how it worked last year so many times. Think how many times they ran on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 late in games last year, and they'd get the first down, and they'd move the chains. No. Greg Roman put Lamar Jackson in an empty set, 5 wide, and Lamar Jackson delivered an MVP caliber throw to Marquise Brown to seal the game.
And by the way, your first-round draft pick didn't drop the ball either, and it was not an easy catch. That's a great play, and then your wide receiver drops the ball, and you're like, oh, he's a rookie. That happens too, right? Perfect throws are not always caught.
Correct. It was a good throw, or it was a good catch. It was a perfect throw. The coverage there, you go back and look at it, the coverage was perfect. It's really a case where Tremaine Brock has nothing to be ashamed of. That was perfect coverage on a speedster like Marquise Brown.
Yeah, it was only one place that ball could go safely.
Yeah, and he made the catch. So that's the takeaway. We can, and we'll dive into the other aspects and how the secondary looked and miscommunication and the fact that no one other than Lamar Jackson really ran the ball all that effectively. But it came down to the Ravens needing to make a play to not punt the ball back to Arizona, not put the ball back in Kyler Murray's hands, not be in a position of having another communication breakdown on the back end of the defense, and Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown make the play, and the Cardinals didn't get the ball back. So that's the takeaway. Getting the win, great. 23-17 against the Arizona Cardinals, who had the number 1 overall pick. Not going to win you style points in the way that maybe there were some last week when you score a franchise record 59 points. But for Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown to come through in that situation and put the game on ice, that's really encouraging, and it's just another snapshot of what this offense, what this quarterback is capable of, and it's getting really exciting here very quickly here in 2019.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's getting exciting really quickly, right? Like, when's the last time we were excited about 2-0 around here? When was the last time we looked up and the national media was coming here to sniff around our young players or our young stars or, hey, what's going on in this weird system that they put together here that no one liked in the offseason. You know what I mean? Like, I go back 2 weeks ago, you and I were a little skeptical. And that being said, look, it's Miami and Arizona. I'm going to keep going back to that.
Right.
You start to put the big boy pants on right now, but this feels like a very credible playoff capable team that when you start 2-0, if somehow you finish 7-9, oh boy, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if they have that kind of stumble, then that tells me probably injuries. That tells me that some of their weaknesses really are exploited. And let's face it, as much as we're going to be excited throughout the week talking about Lamar Jackson against Patrick Mahomes and talking about last year's game, with the way the Ravens secondary played on Sunday against Kyler Murray, who, by the way, really impressive. I think he's going to be a good quarterback if they put enough talent around him over the next couple years. I think you saw more than flashes. He played well for some significant stretches of that game. But as much as we're going to talk about the quarterback matchup, we're going to be talking about the secondary having some breakdowns and having some injuries, of course, and knowing that the Chiefs are going to score points against anyone here in 2019. But it really is a case where now you look at this going into Week 3, understanding how the Ravens played last year in Kansas City. It wasn't a low-scoring game, but it was low-scoring for Kansas City standards. But with the way that the offense, the way that Lamar Jackson's playing to start this season, you have more confidence that the Ravens could even go into Kansas City and hang with the Chiefs if it turns into a shootout. And when could you ever say that about a Ravens offense? Never. I mean, maybe go back to Vinny Testaverde throwing the ball around back in 1996 to Michael Jackson and Derek Alexander. I mean, the Ravens have just never been that kind of team, and to see that kind of, those kind of offensive fireworks, that kind of potential, even though I get it, they scored 23 points. It wasn't an explosion in terms of points, and I think that's why Lamar Jackson was a little annoyed after the game that they did leave some plays and some opportunities on the field, but you just feel more and more the confidence growing in him and the confidence growing in this offense that even with some of the hiccups defensively that they had on Sunday, that you have every bit of confidence they can go into Kansas City. I'm not going to say they're going to win the game, but I definitely see scenarios now where they can win the game that doesn't just involve ball control like it was last year where they took the Chiefs down to their limit.
Luke Jones joining us on the Lee Tessier team hotline around here. And I'll tell you what, we got a lot of things happening. Baltimore Positive moves us to Fadley's on Thursday. We'll be with Baltimore City Council President and mayoral candidate. Got to learn how to say that, mayoral candidate. Brandon Scott will join us at Fadley's at 10 a.m. on Thursday, all part of our Baltimore Positive. If you haven't heard it this week, incredible stuff with former Baltimore County School Superintendent Stuart Berger talking about Kerwin, as well as Sarah Heminger talking about fixing the city. And if you missed Reverend Al Hathaway, all of that out at Baltimore Positive. You'll also hear it sporadically this week. I'm trying to run a lot of those during the lunch times around here, but we'll see how it all pans out. Luke Jones joining us now. And, of course, Baltimore Positive next week back at Jennings and at State Fair in Catonsville. Find out all that Don Moeller and I are doing there. Also, Curio Wellness. I visited with them from 3 until 5 on Friday. Got myself a new Curio purple shirt that I'm going to debut here a little later on this week. The Holistic Spa with the top-of-the-line products and experienced pros. If you hear about CBD, cannabis, medicinal, they are the folks you need to put you in the right direction. Brian Sanderoff's there. It's interesting sitting in the showroom there for 2 hours watching so many Ravens fans come in, people with questions, people buying Holistic, people stopping by to get a massage, people stopping by to get acupuncture. Curio Wellness Center in Timonium. I got an eye-opening experience last Friday being there as well. I'm wearing my Hammer and Nails shirt. Got my good-looking haircut going on underneath of my hat today. Hammer and Nails is the ultimate man cave nirvana. It's right out in Owings Mills in the town center. Manicure, pedicure, TVs, adult beverages, hot towels, shave, relax, stop by. I do on Wednesdays after Ravens practice. Also, we have the Sporticulture, the lava lamp. My cat was eating the flowers, although Court is going to send some beautiful flowers up here that are purple and gold. Now that we're 2-0, we're going to need that. But I'm going to have purple lava and magma here. Sporticulture delivers all sorts of great sports novelty gifts and fresh flowers to your door. Find out all about what they do out in Damascus area. I was out when I took the Goodyear blimp ride. I drove right past Court's Place out there at Walnut Springs, just in Howard County, past Glenelg. Stop out, see them, order them online at sporticulture.com. Luke, for all of the Lamar Jackson and the wheels, and he could take off and run, and he did take off and run 16 times. He did not get annihilated. He has learned to get out of bounds. It feels like a free 8 yards every time he does take off, because when he takes off, it generally means 5 wide receivers and tight ends and running backs have run the whole secondary down the field, and he's got to shake off a D lineman and, maybe beat a linebacker to the edge or whatever. But it's the throwing the ball part that we're all going to focus on, and how he throws and when he's long and when he's short. He missed a couple of touchdown throws, quite frankly, in the course of everything, that maybe last week he hits, maybe next week he misses, who knows. But Mark Andrews, Hollywood Brown, 8 catches, both of them out of the gate. We're 2 weeks into this now, and we were wondering where the targets are going to come from, and where's that next Anquan Bolden and that Dennis Pitta, and where's that security blanket. And it's nice that Nick Boyle's running around, and we're going to have him out at Adams Jeep in 2 weeks on the 30th. And it's nice that Pat Ricard comes in there and blows some guys up. But this really feels like it's about Andrews and Brown, even though, we have a first-round draft pick in Hayden Hurst who, caught one ball. The running backs, there's been some split duty there, and Mark Ingram got all the money. But it's throwing the football, and it's a connection now that we're seeing with Hollywood and with Mark Andrews. And the Hollywood thing's incredible to predict, because he was not running around out there in OTAs in most of the summer, right?
Right. I mean, he didn't take part in any spring workouts whatsoever. He was not a full go in training camp until, I want to say, August 10th, I think, was his first experience with full team reps. I mean, he's even gotten the first couple Fridays of the regular season off, so it tells you that they're still managing him. They're still managing the foot. He had a little bit of a hip issue last week, and if we're being honest, that might be a recurring theme for him. He's 170 pounds, listed 170 pounds. I don't know what he actually is. I'm guessing it's not 170 pounds.
Is he listed at 170 pounds? I didn't know that. He's listed at 100. I thought they'd lie and call him a $182 or something,
Yeah, he's listed at 170, and I'm guessing he's not 170 pounds. But my point is, yeah, he might be a guy that you certainly have to be mindful of taking care of him physically. But for him to have this kind of production, and we'll address Mark Andrews in a moment. I'm not surprised to see Mark Andrews do this. We saw the developing chemistry with Lamar Jackson that he had last year. We saw him make the big catch in the first Chargers game. And we saw him even make plays for Joe Flacco as the quarterback early last year. So I'm not surprised to see Mark Andrews take this leap, but I don't think anyone who monitored the progress of Marquise Brown understood how many reps he missed in the spring and the summer, how little he played in the preseason. Keep in mind, his preseason action as a wide receiver came with who at quarterback? Trace McSorley. He didn't play a single preseason snap with Lamar Jackson. And for these two to have the rapport that they've shown over the first 2 weeks, and I get it, it's Miami, it's Arizona, I understand that, but to show the chemistry that they have already developed, it really makes you think, boy, what's going to happen when these two guys have actually played with each other on the field for a while? That's an exciting thought for the Ravens. That's a really scary thought for opposing defense.
Well, Kansas City's going to have to game plan this week and look up, and now they've got some tape, right? Like, there was no tape on the team. Now there's some tape, and you got some things you're going to have to contend with here when it comes to speed, and that's week after week. And whatever the Chargers did with that 9-2 defense that they try, I mean, Kansas City has known Baltimore's on the schedule. They might not have known they were going to be 2-0 and looking like trouble this week. Looking like this is going to have to be something to contend with for 60 minutes because the speed's not going to take any time off.
Right. And I think what's different here is the Ravens are going to be a handful for anyone. Last year they were. Regardless of how many points they ultimately scored or how many yards they ultimately rushed for or whether they were not very productive in the red zone, which those were all realities for them down the stretch last year. Just the style of having a quarterback who can take off and run 14 times. Not counting the two quarterbacks.
Well, you can't leave him alone, right? Like if he just drops back to pass and you're sending a 4-man rush and sending everybody out into some sort of zone coverage, you've just given him a first down. I mean, like literally, if he sees it and he's going to get better at seeing it, he's already not poor at seeing it, and he knows enough to go right to the sideline. And then if it's you and him in pursuit, he's got the out of bounds anytime he wants it. He's got the hook slide anytime he wants it. And the one thing he didn't do early in the game, and I screamed bloody hell, which was get rid of the ball, dude. Just throw the ball away. Just throw it away. You don't need to go out of bounds. You don't need to take a loss. You don't need to take any hit. You don't even need to get threatened with getting hit. If you're getting pursued and you're about to lose 7 yards running out of bounds, dirt the ball. He didn't do it the first time. He did it the rest of the day on Sunday.
Sure, and some of that's just part of the maturation process for a 22-year-old quarterback. I mean, go and look and see what other quarterbacks, 24, 23, 22 years old, go back and watch Joe Flacco his first couple of years. And I'm sure, now you're not seeing Joe Flacco take off as a 24-year-old quarterback, but I'm sure you're seeing plenty of scenarios where didn't throw the ball away when he should have or gave up on a play too quickly. All those different things. I mean, some of that is just being young. But what's different is, and we saw this in the Miami game, the Dolphins achieved their goal of not allowing Lamar Jackson to take off and run. That used to be the formula, right? I mean, that's what the Chargers did so well the second time around. Keep him in the pocket and do what you can to ensure that the rest of the running game doesn't kill you, and you'll make him stand in the pocket and throw. I mean, that was the formula. That's what everyone assumed was going to be the magic trick to slowing down this Ravens offense. And Lamar Jackson, 600 passing yards and 7 touchdown passes later, as we're getting ready for Week 3, that's changed. That reality is no longer reality. So if you're the Chiefs, you might have had this fantastic game plan that you thought was going to be able to really limit the Ravens in the way that they weren't able to when they played in December and when the Ravens nearly pulled off an upset, that now you have to adjust it and say, hey, we can't just let this guy sit in the pocket and throw either, or he's going to kill us that way. So it really does become a pick-your-poison kind of proposition for these defenses, and that's what's exciting about it. As far as Sunday's game, I said over and over, 3 rushing attempts last week, and really 2, because one was a kneel at the end of the first half. That wasn't the new normal. I've said all along, and I think for as much as there's been some gamesmanship and lip service and some embellishing and some white lies, even if you want to call it that, about what this offense is going to be, I did feel all along that it was a case of it's going to be dictated by what defenses show them. And if it warrants Lamar Jackson taking off 14 times and rushing for 120 yards, and they're trying to take away Mark Ingram and some of the inside runs, then so be it. He'll take off. And what you have to hope for, to the point that you made, is that he makes good decisions in terms of when to slide, when to run out of bounds, that he's minimizing the hits he's going to take. I mean, he's going to take some hits. I mean, that's just the truth. You're going to take hits in the pocket. I mean, Joe Flacco tore his ACL in the pocket 4 years ago. So there's no putting a guy in bubble wrap and guaranteeing that you're going to protect him. You just want him to be selective. You want him to be responsible when he does take the risk of taking a hit. And I think what we've seen at this early juncture in his career, he's pretty good at that. He needs to get better still in that regard, because you want to keep him on the field for 16 games and hopefully for the next decade. But it is really a case of that's a big part of his game. It's a very blessed, gifted part of his game, and you're not just going to take that away. But what's really exciting is when teams are trying to take that away and he is in the pocket, we're seeing him make them pay dearly. And that's where you can keep talking about the competition and say, well, it's Miami. Oh, it's Arizona.
Well, let's say that this week, right? I mean, that's the end this week. Win or lose, this is where we get real, right? Kansas City, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. This is where 2-0 better not become 2-3. It better become 4-1, or maybe, and if it's 5-0, we're on to something. And in the division, we're still looking for the first other win, right? So it really is a pinch me kind of start for I think everybody in the city to sort of get on the bandwagon a little bit, right?
Well, like I said, I mean, the Ravens have started 2-0. I mean, this is the third time in the last 4 years, or fourth time in the last 5, whatever it is, that they've started 2-0. I mean, they started 3-0 in 2016. They were 2-0 in 2017.
And they've had laughers too with Buffalo and Tampa a number of years ago in the big Haloti-Nada game. They've had some opening games where they have been slobber knockered. Yes,
sure, but again, it's not the team result here. I mean, the Ravens could be 2-0, and it could be a very different feeling if they had gone to Miami and kind of just trudged their way through an ugly 20-10 kind of game where they ran the ball pretty well, but Lamar Jackson struggled, or they turned the ball over a couple times. Same thing against Arizona, but again, it's how he's playing, and you can keep bringing his critics, who seem to be falling by the wayside pretty rapidly here with the way he's played. You can keep trying to point to the competition, but to me, you're ignoring the obvious and what's looking apparent through 2 games, and understanding, he didn't play the 2 best defenses in the league. I understand that, but he's exhibiting traits of a guy who has the chance to be special. And that's what's really exciting. I mean, the legs were special last year. We knew the legs were special from the time the Ravens drafted him.
Well, they'll be talking about that pass to Hollywood for weeks and weeks. I mean, even if he doesn't make another one like that for 7 weeks, and he might, but the fact that he can make that throw, the fact that he could hit Hollywood Brown and stride when they hadn't even practiced together last week in Miami, that when someone's open, he's not going to overthrow, underthrow. And as I said, he missed a couple of passes. Joe Flacco missed passes here and did a great job for 12 years, 13 years, whatever it was. Like Tom Brady missed passes on Sunday. It happens. But when you make enough of them, you get to be 2-0, and you get to start to move to the front of class because he has a skill set that Tom Brady's never going to learn, right? And I watched Flacco flop around late in the afternoon yesterday. He put the game on. There's 3 minutes left. They got 6 points somehow, and they need a kicker to make a 57-yard field goal to beat them. But that's the way it went down. Joe Flacco's 0-2. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 0-2. The Washington Redskins are 0-2. We're not. It feels nice.
Right. And to have a quarterback do what he's capable of doing it. And now he's shown it. What were we saying last year? I mean, there were how many times where he would miss a wide-open receiver? There'd be an RPO.
We'd say he's got to get better, right?
Right. We'd say there's a wide... And that has nothing to do with competition. That has to do with having proper footwork and your mechanics being there and just delivering throws when there are open throws to be made. Well, he's done that. To your point, he missed a few throws in the second half. And by the way, he was annoyed in the postgame. You could tell he was happy with the win, but you could tell he wasn't thrilled with how the offense played, only having 6 points in the second half. That mindset is why his teammates and coaches love him so much, and why it's becoming more apparent to me that this kid's going to be as good as he's capable of being, because he just has that kind of mindset to see the improvement he's made. But when you see a perfect passer rating and 5 touchdowns in week 1, when you see an MVP caliber throw, that wasn't a great throw for Lamar Jackson. That was a great throw for any quarterback, from Johnny Unitas to Patrick Mahomes. In that scenario, a 41-yarder, tight coverage, and I mean, that was a dime. That was as good a throw as any other quarterback makes in that kind of scenario. So when you see him do that, and he's doing it more than once, again, it raises the ceiling. It raises the floor on what kind of quarterback he's going to be. And look, there are going to be bumps in the road. Right now, teams that the Ravens are playing later in the season, they have their advanced scouts, their analytics people. They're analyzing tape. They're analyzing the numbers. They're looking at where he's throwing the ball, which, by the way, we've talked a lot about him not throwing outside the numbers. He threw outside the numbers, and he threw to his left with some success on Sunday. So we're seeing him... Well,
he's working on his weaknesses, right? Like, literally, whatever those weaknesses are, the coaches are coaching him up and saying, this is going to get you beat unless you get better at this, literally,
sure.
Right?
But at the same time, every other team, every opposing defense, okay, who they're playing in Week 13 might not be looking at him right now, but who they're playing over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, they're worried about him already 6 weeks from now. Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to talk about advanced scouting, I mean, this guy might top the list right now, what he's done the first 2 weeks after already knowing what he could do with his legs. But there are going to be adjustments, and John Harbaugh even talked about this. In fact, I thought it was a really telling quote, and part of it probably had something to do with the fact that his quarterback was sitting there about 7 feet away from him. But he said, this league has a lot of smart people, a lot of great players. Lamar knows this. They'll be chasing our scheme. And then he went on to talk about playing Kansas City, one of the best teams in the league next week. But he said, we're going to have to be a better football team next week than we were this week or the previous week. That's the way the league works. There are smart coaches out there that are going to scheme up things that, quite frankly, Jackson hasn't seen to this point, and probably more complicated coverages, probably more complicated looks. But what he's shown and the ability to improve, the ability to process, I have more and more confidence every week watching this guy that he's going to figure it out and he's going to continue to get better. And again, that's a scary thought for the rest of the league because we're talking about someone who very clearly had deficiencies in his game, as much success as he and the Ravens had down the stretch last year. And we've seen him improve and improve markedly. And even for all the praises I was singing of Jackson over the summer, I didn't anticipate him looking this good this quickly. And that's exciting. There are going to be bumps in the road. He's going to have some growing pains because he's 22. But I'm starting to think those growing pains are going to be more like little blips than these, these major peaks and valleys, as I thought we might see here in 2019, and that's exciting.
As I say, Lamar, Mr. Jackson, if you're nasty. Luke Jones joins us here. He is Luke at WNST.net. He's also Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. He will be in Owings Mills all week. We've got some things to say about the Orioles later on in the week. We're going to be doing a lot with Brian Billick around here, our partner on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, going into the Ring of Honor. So we're going to spend 2 weeks honoring the coach. We're going to have the coach on as well. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms. They got the waffle sandwiches there now available. Chicken Palooza's over, but the chicken's still there. The Western fries are there. I had some myself. I even got a pint of Ben & Jerry's Chunky Monkey last week while I gassed up down on Key Highway. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Make sure you're downloading the Royal Farms app. You're using that. You'll get your Western fries and your chicken free of charge while you pump your gas. Cole Roofing's here. Gordian Energy. Billy Cole will be here later on in the week. Sponsoring Baltimore Positive, inspiring Baltimore Positive with the Community and Charity Series. Talking about Flip Flop Festivus coming up this Friday for sarcoidosis. Let's see, we had the National Kidney Foundation walk coming up next month as well. That's happened. So all of that in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault. You can go listen. All of it brought to you by Cole Roofing. You know about Baltimore Positive? We're at Fadley's this week with Baltimore City Council President Brandon Scott and mayoral candidate. I got to learn the Mayoral. I'm going to have to learn that one. That's Thursday down at Fadley's Seafood. And we were out in Catonsville last week. We'll be back next week at State Fair and at Jennings doing great stuff. You can find all of that out at Baltimore Positive. Don't forget Compass Point. Bikini wax greens, 32 of them down there in Pasadena. Robert Kennedy's going to join us this week. We're almost to basketball season. He's Buckets and Birds. We'll have a lot of local college basketball stuff. I see local soccer's kicking it around right now. I saw Pete Caringi out there doing it. Terps disappointing us on Sunday. So we're into the heavy sports flow right now. It's September around here, and even though Baltimore Positive's rocking it, we got you covered. It's a great time to go hit the golf ball. Go do it at Compass Point. King Discount Liquors, Lottery Beer, Booze, and the best commercials in Baltimore because I'm a part of them. Footballs, baseballs, basketballs, and Paul King, who's not on Facebook. Johnny Bevan and King All-Stars got me a case of delicious wine back in August, and I'm 2 bottles into my case of wine. So I'll let you know. It may take me a year and a half to drink a case of wine, but 2 months, 2 bottles. So far, so good. King Discount Liquors, we dig them. The Lee Tessier Team Hotline is our new sponsorship for the fall season. I want to give a shout-out to Lee, selling my condo, your home, homes for couple decades now. They're located up in Bel Air, but they do it all around the area. Lee Tessier and his team always there for you. You can call them 410-638-9555 or just go online to leetessier.com. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports and Lamar Jackson.